Stalker is one of the reasons I bought my first PC. It exemplifies everything I knew I would love about PC gaming. GSC, the Ukrainian development team, put out a janky and messy game that both indicates what AAA has always been going for, but also seemingly spits in the face of it. Released in 2007, yet being in development for almost a decade, some of its gameplay systems and even aesthetics are indicative of games from its era, yet it feels so unafraid of being off-putting and weird. It feels so confident in itself that it doesn't really care if you like it, and that led partially to the series being a huge success. Almost 2 decades after release of the first game, one of my biggest worries for Stalker 2 is that it would feel sanitized or more clinical. I was cautious of what years of reflection and presumably a bigger budget would do to it. I'm happy to report my fears were unfounded. This thing, though buggy and incredibly messy, is Stalker through and through, and so much better for it. Here is why you should play Stalker 2, and some of the reasons you may not like it anyway. Stalker 2's opening sets the tone right. In this game you play as Skiff, a stalker making their way into the zone, which is, as you might be able to guess, a zone. It's walled off and secluded in the wake of a nuclear blast and follow-up nuclear event in Chernobyl. You go in via a small hole in the wall with a machine gun, enough bullets to take down a small platoon, and a device to scan and harvest activity. A companion is aiding you through this section of the zone via radio, where you have to get out without being taken down by enemy soldiers. Then you are double-crossed, stripped of your gear and left with nothing but a pistol. You are forced to survive with no guidance on how to handle the mutated fauna and the strange anomalies threatening to kill you if you walk into the wrong part of the thicket. In pursuit of an accurate reflection of my time with the game, I'm going to start with many of the reasons this game may be off-putting. First, it is currently very glitchy, with player models moving weirdly, questlines going wrong, and deaths that can't be explained. As well as this, performance is very inconsistent. Some scenes would work fantastically and flow smoothly, and some chug to a halt, requiring a complete restart to fix. When the game spends a few minutes compiling shaders on every boot up, this combination of problems can become incredibly grating. As well as this, the English voice acting is truly terrible, with the very best voices being barely palatable. It has many elements that I think would be considered bad design in heavy quotations in other games. Some of the ways that this game intentionally halts progress and kicks you out of certain quests and requires you to bang your head against enemy encounters to get to the other side feels like things that just don't exist in huge budget games. I love plenty of quote-unquote AAA games, but with so many people working on them, you can often see the trial by consensus attitude that makes some of them feel quite similar. Of course, Stalker 2 isn't a revolutionary game. It's not going to uproot what it means to play games or set a precedent that everything is going to follow, but it feels so committed to its own bit that it's hard not to instantly fall in love with it. Going back to the way it strips you of that power, this is a fairly common trope in games, often intended to drip feed what it's like to understand the minigame systems, then take it away to give you something to work towards. You are shown power to tell you what you should be aiming for. Stalker 2 uses it instead to strip power away and use that power to exemplify how hopeless everything is. Ripping things off you at the start isn't just a goal and a reason to level up, it's a declaration of intent. The world of Stalker is dark, desperate, and scrappy. If you let your gun get into disrepair, you will find it jamming, and maybe just whipping out a knife and charging that remaining soldier is the only way to narrowly avoid getting slaughtered. Bodies often fall to a single shot in the head, but even their inventory only holds a couple of bullets and equally broken gear. This not only avoids making you too powerful, but serves to show how close to the edge every character is. There are no signposted level up systems in Stalker 2, but there are plenty of ways to upgrade yourself. You get new gear, new attachments for weapons, and can spend your hard-earned coupons to get just a little more damage out of your gun. See, this isn't just a way to make fights go quicker, it's an important strategy to avoid spending too much of your ammo to get to your next objective. The game paces this progression very well and actively rewards you constantly for not immediately fighting the bad guys. You benefit from spending just a few seconds grabbing your knife to open crates rather than shooting the top of them off. This game is a survival horror in a sense, but also feels quite removed from what that image may paint in your mind. It has a huge open world, and you can technically stockpile lots of resources to push through the game's hardest moments, but it limits this through a smart inventory system. At one point about midway through, I found myself collecting many bullets for a certain gun type because a lot of enemies I fought had them, even though I never had a gun that could use them. My video game hoarding brain kicked in and thought to stockpile them, only to force me into dropping them all to avoid costing my stamina regeneration in a fight. Being a pack mule has serious downsides, and most of my thinking throughout the game went into how to maximize my gear to have the exact right amount of bandages, medkits, and food to get to my next questline. Enemies can kill you easily if you aren't careful, and there's nothing quite as scary as running away from a mutant, only to find yourself in the middle of a pack of scavengers looking to pick you clean. Within a few hours, I found myself looking around every corner with tension, ready to pull the trigger at the slightest movement, and this ended with me accidentally killing a quest giver in a particularly brutal gunfight. To atone for my sins, I wandered the wastes of the zone until I picked up another clue for the story, and followed that thread until I was caught up again. You can make many big decisions with obvious choreography, but also many tiny ones with the way you decide to fight, how you tackle the world, and more. This makes everything feel so grand and hits at that almost immersive sim-like development of some of the world. Many of the game's locations have multiple ways of tackling them, from crawling through vents to kicking down the front door, and the high stakes of almost losing yourself to the zone means you feel incredibly satisfied when hunting down that code or smashing through those boxes avoids you running straight into the proverbial mousetrap of mutated dogs looking for a light snack. That scrappiness I feel as I play is helped by many quests having different ways of solving them, and some of them will even fail without you quite knowing why, and this helps to solidify that feeling that you aren't really the main character. Of course you are, and the main quest with you siding between different warring factions and discovering why your home was destroyed does really drive home that you are the center of this game, but it also does so much to minimize you and make you feel like nothing. I've even had some important fights end before I arrive because a traveling group of mercenaries has wandered into the wrong cave or got caught up in the wrong anomaly. These anomalies are great for your exploration of the world too, alongside stalkers who are adventurers exploiting the zone for their own purposes, factions who all have different ideologies and claims to the powers that come from these powerful blasts, and mutated animals who have caught just a little too much radiation. There are fields of what are essentially energy that slash you open, throw you, or just outright kill you if you walk into them. This is kind of genius, as giving you a major deterrent that you can't just sink bullets into trains your brain into understanding there's more than one way to solve a questline, and I found myself even being helped by anomalies after a short time. You can detect them with a small anomaly scanner on your body or find them through visual clues and walk enemies straight into them. In a sense, this helps to ground the zone itself as a character in the world with its own unique personality and tone. As a stalker, you are using this zone for your own needs, but you often feel like an unwanted guest and don't quite have the firepower to ever truly feel comfortable. Even inventory management and navigating your map doesn't pause the game, so you are constantly afraid of being caught off guard. On the world being a character, it doesn't just feel like this because of the anomalies and the animals, it feels like that because of the way everything fits into a cycle. Every now and then an emission will happen, which is essentially an incredibly dangerous storm that kills you within a few moments. You have to rush to a shelter and deal with whoever gets stuck in that shelter with you. That could be a group of bandits or a few stray adventurers with nothing but a pistol and a guitar. Some fights can end in you blowing their head off or them getting hit by a stray lightning bolt. Environments feel handcrafted and intentional with tons of interesting environmental storytelling and little touches of human life. I've enjoyed firing down a line of enemies just as much as I have playing guitar at a broken down campfire with not a single soul around. Everything about Stalker 2 feels intentional and thought out. Even that guitar, which you can grab at any point and play, is indicative of that. Despite inventory space being really tight, the guitar doesn't take up any of that space. It could have fit into your backpack and been a consideration you make, but it wasn't. Stalker 2 doesn't go for ultra realism, instead its realism is in service of the tone, and that tone is phenomenal. This game regularly breaks. It makes some decisions around a few of its fights that baffles me, it crashes, and textures have frustrated me, yet my desire to suspend my disbelief has been above it all. I think Immersion is typically talked about in aesthetics, in a game's ability to add even the most minute details, textures, and sounds, yet Stalker 2 is one of the buggiest and most immersive games I've played all year. I felt myself go entirely silent, which is rare for me, and just take in everything in those solemn moments. The game regularly has you do treks of multiple kilometers over the environment, yet I found myself enjoying the pace of everything. For these reasons, I could see this game frustrating or disappointing many. There are plenty of things Stalker 2 does well that other games could never quite get away with, and I think this is partially down to how hard it commits to making those work. Its design is both unforgiving and unrelenting. It is incredibly strong-willed in a way that is hard to fully grasp. I think for this reason, much of how I will praise and enjoy Stalker 2 will be the same reasons I love the previous games. In that sense, it doesn't feel like a huge departure from them. Having tested all the difficulty modes, they each provide a distinct way of playing the game, with the easiest offering a more laid-back exploration of the world, the starting difficulty striking that perfect tense balance earlier on and getting easier as you play, and the hardest being absolutely brutal. At about the halfway point, I found myself getting truly accustomed to everything and not being quite as scared to rush out there, so I thought it was time for a harder mode, and I felt entirely dry of supplies in about an hour. This game is not only massive in raw size, but it's also a very long game, with the main campaign taking tens of hours of gameplay. As of now, I've seen an ending and completed a series of side quests, but feel I could spend another 50 hours in this world, so consider this my thoughts and progress that will likely be developed and changed as I get more time not only to further play the game and see even more of it, but to let it all stay in my head and settle with me. If you haven't played the previous Stalker games, I actually think Stalker 2 is a decent entryway into the series. The story builds upon the previous games and even directly mentions key points from them, but being left in the dark there won't take away from how effective that story can be. Many of the factions are unique to the game itself, and the world feels self-contained in many ways. For the most part, the story is good, and most importantly, decisions give a sense of control over everything. The setup for you being in the zone is mostly just okay, but this allows you to embody Skiff quite well, and the game knows it. You are here mostly for the grander story it tells, and not for Skiff himself. You are functionally a vessel to play out the lives of the inhabitants of the world, and this helps to ground everything. It's important to note that part of this game's delays and likely bugginess now is due to the troubled history of the development team. Not only was a major part of this developed during the COVID lockdowns, but as a Ukrainian dev, this was directly impacted by Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and actually makes the game oddly fascinating as a result. Parts of the original games are left vaguely Ukrainian and relies heavily on the cultural and social handshakes between the two entities. You see a lot of Russian names in the original games, Russian text, and even the currency is in rubles. It's in Soviet rubles, which makes the currency choice feel like more of an aesthetic choice than a political statement, but still, Stalker 2's currency is coupons. Where previous games have vague gestures towards Ukraine and Russia together in many ways, Stalker 2 feels staunchly and singularly Ukrainian, which kind of makes this game a fantastic piece of resistance art in its own way. Even something as small as changing the spelling of Chernobyl is a public act of resistance that is really quite brilliant. As a flower growing through a crack of pavement or a light cutting through the dark, Stalker 2 is wonderful, but it's also just a genuinely charming and engaging game that I've had tons of fun with and see myself spending much more time with. I can imagine picking this up in a dark morning at some point next year just to wander around. I could imagine booting it up in a few years just because I've forgotten what the opening cutscene looks like. I think writing my feelings on this game has been surprisingly tough, not because the words aren't coming out, but because they aren't quite coming out the tone I want them to. Stalker 2 is very, very rough and needs quite a bit of work, yet almost every word I've written about it is about how much I adore it, how its little systems have wormed their way into my brain. Where it is now, I couldn't really recommend picking this game up, but I find it hard to fully believe you'll regret it if you do. I think it makes plenty of choices from a design perspective that should turn me off it. There are plenty of agonizing and annoying decisions that waste my time and have me hunting around objectives. There are plenty of moments where I've sat and wondered if the game is being esoteric or if it's just bugged. The answer is about 60% of the time it's esoteric, yet exploring this broken little world has been one of my favorite gaming experiences of the year. There's something beautiful under the rubble of this game's long development time, and I can't wait to see even more of it. Thank you for watching my review of Stalker. Apologies for some of the early clips having a watermark on it. That came with the review build, so there's not really much I can do about that. If you've enjoyed this and want to hear more of my thoughts on games, please do subscribe. It always helps. Stalker 2 is a wonderful and weird game that's hard to fully explain or describe, and I feel like I could make a video that's double this length and I still wouldn't get through all of it. It is really broken in a lot of specific ways. And after a week and a bit of playing it, I remember my partner looking around to me and saying, like, you don't look like you're enjoying this at all. She couldn't tell how much I liked it, because the times where I was really enjoying this, I was almost utterly silent. It doesn't have those moments where I'm like, whoa, what is this? Or I want to show her. It's more of a quiet contemplation. It's the vibe it conjures. and all she saw was me having to restart the whole thing because some bug has happened or because it's performing really poorly. So it's a weird one. I probably wouldn't advise playing this on its epic settings. I have a 4070 Super, I have a 7900 X3D, 32 gigs of RAM, 7900 X3D. I think I might have got that wrong. Either way, I have a pretty beefy rig right now, and it really chugged on it. And I'm not the only one that's had that problem. I've spoken to a couple other people who say, yeah, just don't play it on the highest. It's fine on high. It looks good, which it does. Which again, I could have went more into that, the aesthetic of it, how it feels to play, even some of the gunplay I would have liked to talk about more. But I'm at 15 minutes, and I feel like there's so much more to explore. The game is, I think, out now, or will be by the time this comes out, like an hour away. So if you have like a Game Pass, I would just go out and play it. If not, and you really like Stalker and you're okay with lots of bugs and poor performance for a great game, then go for it. Otherwise, hopefully this thing will be excellent for you in 6 months. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please do subscribe, and if you feel like being generous, please check out any of my other videos. It really helps. Thank you.